Good morning and welcome to the Red Net Show, where it's always morning, even in the afternoon. I am your host, Jay Edgar, and in the absence of Elaine, we have been having some great guests coming on for the past month, and today's guest is going to be no slouch, I'm sure. Please welcome the wonderful Natalie Bruno, running for Oklahoma governor right now. Natalie, welcome to the Red Net Show. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I appreciate that.
Now, I told you a little bit about this before we went live here, but you're not the first candidate that I've had on here, and I know a lot of times when you come onto podcasts, they're just expecting you to give the stump speech and go, but we're not going to do that today. I'm going to give you a little bit of time to give a little bit of the stump speech, but we're going to actually go into the issues today, talk about what's in the news and how you would think that you would handle this here. I'm actually fairly excited for this. I love doing this with candidates, just to sit down and see how they stand on some of these things and what the policy prescriptions are. So I hope you're ready.
I'm ready when you are.
All right. Well, you are new here, of course, and not all of my audience is probably familiar with you. But before we get into anything else off of this here, even before we start to sell the wares, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself and how you got here?
Yeah, so I am a military brat. I've kind of lived all over the place. Was born here in Oklahoma, even though I left shortly after for Germany, but I have been back ever since I was 18. So it's been a nice long stint back up here. Outside of that, I've been in marketing advertising for about the last, 12 to 14 years, depending on part-time work, if that counts or not. So I've been doing that.
I think so.
I would like to think so. I've been in the Liberty movement and been an activist for a few years now. I was the marketing director for Joan and Spike's campaign.
Okay.
So I was in that space, been very active in the state of Oklahoma as of the last year or so, and then recently decided, obviously, to throw my hat in the ring for governor of Oklahoma next year.
That's a pretty lofty one too, because as far as I know, Oklahoma's a fairly solid red place, is it not?
It is, but there's a lot of things kind of happening in our state. So the voter registration is right at about 50% Republican, and then the rest is divided between Democrats, independents, and libertarians. Mm-hmm. And then inside of that, the Republican Party here, ever since Trump leaving office, has gotten very divided between MAGA supporters and non-MAGA supporters. So this is actually a really great election year for a libertarian to have a really strong chance, because of the fact that they are very divided. So I'm hoping to be able to capitalize on that, for the people within the within the Republican Party who are actually very libertarian and probably are libertarian and just don't know it, and to be able to kind of pull them over to the gold side of things.
Well, we'll see where that goes. I'll know by the end of the show where I stand on that as well, but I really just kind of want to see how this goes and, how everything's going to do. I'm always looking forward to seeing people come out that were not politicians that get into office too, because, we've had so many of these dynastic people who've been there forever. So I've always got a little bit of support for people who are coming in to challenge the beast. So you've got that on me already, definitely. I'm going to go ahead and pull this. I'm going to go pull this out of the screen here because the people who made that can are not paying me. So their advertising doesn't get to be on the show. If they were paying me, I would leave the can in the shot. But anyway, we've got a bunch of stuff to get to here today. It's going to be a wild one. And I'm going to be the host that forgot to mute his phone, too. So we'll go on with that as well. So the Olympics...
I'm good with that, as long as you're good with, you might hear the occasional dog bark or a child that forgot that mom is on a Zoom call right now and they need to stay away. So we will work with it.
Well, we got to talk a little bit. The Olympics are here, and they're going on right now. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the games, some of the disappointment I have in the... the pistol and rifle team from the USA, who managed to not get a gold medal against all the other countries that don't allow pistols and rifles against everybody else. We'll go into that a little bit. And some of the fun stuff that led on to this, including the bed controversy of all the things that we could talk about. The bed controversy that started with this, so we'll go a little bit over that. The houseplant-in-chief managed to give himself a town hall this past week, and it went, well, about how you'd expect. a
Yeah.
town hall to go for a person with Alzheimer's. So we'll talk just a bit about what was going on with that, including a photo that was snapped of the empty room that, I would expect to see a half-filled auditorium in COVID times, except with people spaced out instead of all crunched together in half the room. So we'll go over just a bit about that. With the libertarian side of things and actually having a LP party member here, the Whitmer FBI plot came to a bit of a head this weekend with several glowing ones showing up in the ranks. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on there and why we shouldn't trust the federal police. I'm really excited for this one here. This would have not been a main topic except for the fact that you're here because the Texas Democrat saga continues, and I really want to get your take on what you would do in the situation where your legislation refuses to come out and vote like that. So we're going to talk a bit about that. Plus, a sixth Democrat came forward with COVID, and a Huffington Post article that, we read the bill on air on Contemporary out loud where they outright lied about a bill that was passed by the Texas Senate in the absence. So we'll go over that. Plus, we'll talk about some breakthrough cases stuff, maybe what the new pandemic is going to be. And the 1/6 Commission is coming up here, too. Plus, I got a little bit of surprise stupidity at the end for you, something that I think we're all going to smile at just a little bit at the end here. I thought it was absolutely hilarious, and I'm hoping that you guys will, too. It's going to be all this and more over on the Red Net Show. Thanks for checking us out live over on YouTube, DLive, Twitch, not Periscope. There's no more Periscope, but Facebook and Trovo as well. Thanks for checking us out on all of those platforms. And if you want to get in the chat, we will take chat between topics here. So get your questions in, and we will answer them as we shift between topics here. So definitely do that. And if you can't catch us live, you want to catch us back on demand, we will also be over on YouTube and over on BitChute.com. So you can go check us back on the replay as well. Links in the description below, so you can go and check us out in there. And also, with the new upcoming project that I continue to tease as we go along here, you can also go and check out my friends, The Daily Ignoramus, The Generational Gap, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, and The Freckles and Brit Show, all returning members of the Freedom Scoop Media Group that will be coming and participating in the upcoming project that I've been teasing but not talking much about. So go over there and check out all my friends over there. They're all great creators, and once we get this new project up and running, you can come over and help us support great creators as well. So you can go check that out. Let's get into this, because this wasn't as black pill of a news week as some of them have been, but there's still some stuff that we got to talk about here. Starting today with the Dissociated Press. Garland bars prosecutors from seizing reporters' records. Attorney General Merrick Garland on Monday formally prohibited federal prosecutors from seizing the records of journalists in leak investigations, with limited exceptions, reversing years of department policy. The new policy largely codifies the commitment Garland made in June when he said the Justice Department would abandon the practice of seizing reporters' records as part of efforts to uncover confidential sources. It aims to resolve a politically thorny issue that has long vexed the Justice Department prosecutors, trying to weigh the media's First Amendment rights against the government's desires to protect classified information. And this is the best part. Because, yes, there are certain exceptions, including if they're under investigation for something else. Surprise, surprise. Oh, hey, your banking statements don't quite match up. Hey, we're going to investigate you. We're going to look at your records. What's your take on this one?
So I do believe that there needs to be a small caveat, but not in situations like that. If there is a situation where legitimate information was leaked that could actually harm Americans or harm the government in some way, I could see that as being a caveat for a reason to allow, pulling records and finding out who the, informants are. But outside of that, I think it's great that they're actually trying to keep records from being pulled, because as we've seen with a lot of different whistleblower situations, I, as an American, want people to feel comfortable if there is something wrong going on in the government, to feel comfortable going to a journalist with it without feeling like that there is a chance that their name is going to be leaked and, they could have some sort of repercussions because of that. So I like that they are trying to protect the media more in that regard, but I'm okay with caveats, but I feel like those need to be super defined as this is something that could harm us or harm somebody. And that is why we're needing to know who said this, not as a situation like that where it's oh, money laundering or, oh, this. It's okay, is it really that serious? You know what I mean? So that's kind of my stance on that.
Yeah, and I've been under this government that we live under for 37 years, and I know swamp's gonna swamp. They're gonna find some way to come back out and do this. Oh, hey, we found a reason to go investigate you.
Exactly.
Surprise.
Exactly. And that's why it's like we need it to be like specific to where it's like, okay, so you let out the coordinates of like something that is, detrimental to us, whatever. Like it needs to be something very specific to where it was harmful, not just like, oh, we just make up a reason to why it's important so we can go ahead and find out who it is anyways, because that's not right.
Oh, they like to make up reasons. On the other
Oh,
side of
definitely.
this, Cleveland. Cleveland has got a new baseball team, and we're not going to watch the video because, yeah, I got popped on YouTube for that this morning. The Black Keys apparently don't like it when you replay their song, even if there's somebody talking over the top of it. I found that out the hard way this morning. The Cleveland baseball team is no longer going to be the Indians after this season. Now, they are going to finish the season as the Indians, but starting next year, they're going to be the Cleveland Guardians, named for the statues on the bridge that goes over the Cuyahoga River. Which I kind of like that, really, honestly, because there's a little bit of history to this. I mean, it's not just slap a barcode on the side of the helmet and say Cleveland baseball team, like certain members of Washington.
Hmm.
But what's your take on this?
So, see, this is one of those tricky situations. I'm not Native American, and so I really try not to give an opinion on whether or not somebody is being overly sensitive or anything like that, if it's in a situation where I don't have skin in the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, that being said, I think it's great that they are trying to be inclusive, and at least they chose something that, historically, matters to their area. I think that's awesome. I do kind of cringe a little bit of in regards to cancel culture in general, in regards to lots of other things, but I can understand how Native Americans could feel about some of the usage. And I think that it's great. At least they're trying to keep that into consideration. But I try not to be like, oh, I feel this way about something where it's like, I'm Native American, so I really don't feel like I'm not Native American. So I don't really feel like I have the right to say one way or the other on it.
My big question on this entire thing is, are we still going to be able to watch Major League, or is that going to be stealth edited?
I don't know. I mean, man, the way that sports are going right now, like I had a conversation with somebody recently just with, allowing transgender athletes or not allowing transgender athletes, allowing this, not allowing that, when you're talking about college sport, there's so many things that are rapidly changing. Like, it's sad to say this, but even with like the, bringing up cancel culture again with, the national anthem and the players. And it's like, we give it a few more years. If they don't start like really changing things, I mean, I almost feel like it's going to implode and people aren't even going to be watching sports anymore, which is sad because I love watching sports myself, but it's just quickly
Yeah.
getting pretty nasty pretty quick and pretty political. Like that's why I try to keep the government and politics out of sports for that reason.
Can you see the Transformers poster behind? I know you were looking at a different webcam than I do with the lower def, but can you see the Transformers picture behind me?
Just barely. I can see the very bottom of Optimus Prime, it looks like.
Yes, that used to be the Red Sox flag before everything went woke.
Oh yeah, it's really kind of sad. Luckily, my favorite team is the Rangers, and so we're safe.
Here's one that I found interesting here. This one comes to us from The Hill. Shocking poll finds many Americans now want to secede from the United States. Reading briefly from this, support for secession is growing among every partisan group in the months following the January 6th riots at the Capitol, but particularly among Southern Republicans, a new poll found. Brightline Watch, in conjunction with YouGov, found that citizen support for their state or region to secede from the U.S. is greatest in the South, where they did it already, where support was already highest and has the greatest historical precedent. Over 37% of respondents indicated with a willingness to secede. Now, that's just what the headline is and where the Hill wants you to stop off of this, but I've read through this entirely and looked into some other sources from this. And it looks like, yes, they're correct. Southern Republicans are the most apt to want to secede from the Union. But Midwest independents are also seeming to be apt, and California and West Coast Democrats are also very, very eager to secede from the Union. But what's your take on some of these numbers here?
I'm not surprised at all. I think that more so now than ever, people are realizing that the government that they have and that they voted for is not actually the government that is really on their side or that they believe in. And I think that that's even our own way of basically saying we want smaller government. That's basically what they're saying. They're tired of the federal government making choices for everybody when we're all extremely different. California versus Oklahoma, like it's night and day. Our needs, our economy, everything, and even within our
Yes.
state, super different, right? We have like 3 large cities, and the rest are rural. And so I think that is kind of Americans' ways of saying, like, we don't agree with our government. We don't think that they're making changes that are in our best interest. And so we want to secede. So it's just our state. It's like, well, we can accomplish that. Get a libertarian in office. I'm telling you, we want smaller government. We want it local so that we can make choices for ourselves. And it's just, how, at least for me, anytime I talk to somebody that's an R or a D, I'm too utopian, that would never happen. But it's like, well, of course, if you're just going to keep electing Republicans and Democrats in the office, you're going to keep getting the same thing. But if you actually want something different and you want something to where you feel like you have control within your state, you get a libertarian in office and we will make it happen.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of what I see. I mean, I look at some of this pragmatically too. Like they talk about Wyoming seceding. Really, what are you going to do, Wyoming? You have no shipping lanes anywhere. If you got a couple other people involved with you, yeah, I could see that, where you could actually have a port, but, Wisconsin's not going to secede by itself. The St. Lawrence Seaway is powerful. It's just not that powerful. But, yeah, that's what we see from this. A little bit of good news for you, at least, because this can't all be bad here. Husky abandoned on Texas roadside. In viral video is rescued, adopted. Suspect facing animal cruelty charges. A little brief read here. A Texas man was arrested Friday accused of animal cruelty after he allegedly abandoned a husky alongside a roadside in El Paso, authorities said. Luis Antonio Campos, 68, was booked into El Paso County Detention Facility on $5,000 bond, the El Paso County Sheriff's Office said, adding that another arrest was expected as the investigation continued. And, guys, if you want your heart to break just a little bit, we're going to watch the video of this poor loyal dog who didn't know what was about to happen. There he goes. He's just running. He doesn't know why mommy and daddy are leaving. And all he wants to do is come back and go home. But he is adopted now, so he's got a new good home and hopefully somebody who loves him. Thoughts?
That is, so I have 3 dogs myself, and they're 3 big dogs. I have a white German Shepherd, a Pit mix, and a Husky Lab mix. And so I'm always a bleeding heart for animals. I'd be like, if I only have one more space for a dog because we can have a max of 4 dogs in our city, which is for a good thing, my husband says, because I'd end up with like 18 dogs. I'd have more dogs than I have kids. So yeah, I hate stuff like that for sure. But at least he was adopted. That's good. Hopefully he has a good family that keeps him.
Yeah. Reading from Politico, Senate Democrats propose requiring women to register for the military draft. Senate Democrats are proposing a sweeping rewrite of the military draft laws aimed at requiring women to register for selective service, according to a draft authored by Senate Armed Service Chair Jack Reed and obtained by Politico. The changes to selective service could be attached to the National Defense Authorization Act, a defense policy bill that's one of the few pieces of legislation considered a must-pass by Congress. The move would reignite a contentious debate over whether women should be required to register for the draft, a move the House and Senate have each considered in recent years, though the change has never become law. And the whole thing about them talking about the draft makes me really nervous all the time because, well, I'm always afraid that there's one coming. But what do you have to say about this?
So I'm against the draft altogether. So I'm a believer that, obviously I'm libertarian, so we don't believe in forcing anybody to do anything, but especially, I'm a military brat myself, so I'm very familiar with military. I do not feel that when you have a case where you are forcing people into service that aren't doing it willingly, that is going to be a good quality soldier, right? Whenever you have soldiers, especially in cases where we need them, when we are going to have a draft, it's usually because we need them for some reason, right? We're sending them overseas. And if you ask any soldier, would you rather have slightly less soldiers, but they are soldiers that want to be there, that you know is going to have your back, or have people that did not want to be involved, did not want to be drafted, did not want to be overseas, and you're going to have to trust those people in worse situations? I guarantee you 100% of them would say, I would much rather have people that want to be there, that will have my back, than people that didn't want to be there. You know, who knows if they're going to go AWOL, who knows if they're going to have their back, or they're going to be, you know, scared. Like, I'm completely against the draft altogether. We have seen, even with 9/11, in cases where something happens to us and we need to, you know, have more military presence, there were tons of people that went and voluntarily signed up to join the military.
Yes.
So we do not need to have a draft. So it's a moot point. Women or no women, we should not have a draft at all.
Fair point. This one coming out of my neighboring state over here. We get a little bit of Wisconsin heavy episode this time through, or at least northern Midwest heavy episode. Minnesota state lawmaker facing calls to resign following domestic violence, indecent exposure allegations. But the best part of this is they are also calling for him to resign because he's not a resident of Minnesota. Minnesota lawmakers are calling for first-term Rep. John Thompson to resign after a recent traffic stop unveiled a history of alleged domestic abuse and indecent exposure. According to the Washington Post, recently surfaced police video reports revealed that Thompson, who ran a campaign last year that he promised police reform, was accused of choking and hitting his girlfriend on numerous occasions and was once accused of exposing himself to several women while his children were present. And we're not going to go really far into this guy's history. Needless to say, it's if true, and remember, these are all allegations, there were no convictions that went along with this, but if true, this guy's kind of a scumbag. But when he got pulled over in Minneapolis, he handed him a Wisconsin driver's license as a state rep for Minnesota. So that's a problem too.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's worth talking about because they're trying to do the same thing on Herschel Walker right now, and that's national news, and this barely got a blip on the radar. But what's your take on this?
So, just as you said, it's allegations,
Yeah.
right? So when it comes to, you know, where it came from, you know, we have laws set up a certain way whenever it comes to having people get elected, right? So that's a whole separate deal. But for this, you know, obviously if they're true, I mean, I wouldn't want somebody representing, you know, my state that has those kinds of allegations, especially if there is something within like the requirements that disallows them to have those kinds of charges, right? So if there isn't anything in there that says if you have these kinds of charges against you, you cannot be, you know, in office. If there's nothing like that, unfortunately, there's not really anything they could do, but it might be a good tool to, you know, if they feel about that, to put that into as a bill to have passed. But we're also just talking about allegations. It's kind of weird to me. If it's something that actually happened, I don't see why he would say, no, that's not me. I mean, that's a different, you know, results. And then the wife even is like, no, during that time we were together. When yes, that's kind of weird to me that, I mean, because if you're caught, you know that they're going to dig into it. And so you might as well fess up or say, oh, well, here, there was a story behind it or something. So it's kind of weird to me that he's saying like, no, that's not me. She's even saying, no, it's not him. Like, that's just a red flag for me. It's kind of weird.
Yeah. Plus, you know, the whole residency thing on top of that.
Yeah, exactly. The whole thing is just kind of wonky.
So, well, I don't know if anything's going to happen off this. I'm sure we'll hear about it if it does, because I'm sure if he gets removed from office, there's going to be protests everywhere. Let's talk Mr. Bezos, shall we?
Yes.
Bezos jokes about last meal before Blue Origin spaceflight. So Blue Origin flew this past week. They went for a 10-minute flight. They touched the surface of space, and of course, Jeff Bezos and all of his Jeff Bezos-y goodness was joking with all of his... First, before he went up, he was joking about the fact that I wonder if this is going to be my last meal. And then, of course, he ticked off the Honorable and Venerable Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, D-Twitch, by saying thank you to the workers of Amazon and the customers of Amazon for paying for this. What's your take on the Blue Origin flight?
So I probably have an unpopular opinion on this. And I'm just basing this off of the tweets and the comments and stuff that I've seen across social media. I'm very supportive of what he did. You know, a lot of the negativity that I've seen is like, oh, you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, you know, and people are not able to work or eat, and then you're off, you know, spending millions of dollars flying to space for 10 minutes. And here's my thing about the whole situation. Amazon itself, through Amazon Smiles and different programs, donates millions. I think it was $128 million last year, because I looked up all these stats because of this whole situation. And then himself, he was the #1 charitable giver last year, period, out of anybody. He even beat Bill and Melinda Gates in charitable giving, and gave like $22.7 billion to different charities, food banks, everything last year. So if he wants to take some millions of dollars to go fly to space, I mean, I think he's earned it. And what a lot of people don't realize is the cool technology and the things that we have are from people who are like him, that either have the money or have the smarts, or a combination of the two, that, go off on their own and, do things like this and create things that we are then later allowed to use ourselves, right? So, and he has a sense of humor, and that's okay too, talking about last meal and stuff. I mean, we've all seen, what's happened with different flights, and the fact that this is, his and not NASA. So I think people are making a way bigger deal out of it than it really needs to be. I think it's really fantastic. I hope that some of the technology that they use is something that, NASA gets to use, and that, it paves the way for some other cool stuff. I mean, like I said, he's donated enough money, and I'm sure he's paid enough taxes that warrants him being able to make a little joyride to outer space and back.
Well put. I like that. All right, we got just a couple more here to get through, and then we'll get into some of the big news of the day. This one was hilarious. The Lincoln Project blasts Comcast for not running an ad criticizing Fox News. Reading from The Hill, the Lincoln Project is blasting Comcast for refusing to air an advertisement the organization made blaming Fox News for coronavirus deaths among the unvaccinated in the U.S. The Lincoln Project was informed by Comcast that they would refuse to run the commercial because it did not meet their guidelines. We'll go over some of my theories on that later. The organization said in a statement on Thursday, our criticism of Fox News falls under Comcast's description of a business that is in the public forum, or the issue is one of public concern. The Lincoln Project alleged Comcast decided to reject its ad because the media conglomerate is one of the main sources of Fox News revenue. And, not anything for the fact that you guys are standing accused of kitty diddling, and I'm sure that Comcast doesn't want to be anywhere close to you right now.
Yeah, no joke. Well, not only that, I will say I have worked in marketing and advertising, like I said earlier in the show, for a while. And there are very strict guidelines when it comes to types of commercials. Like, just because you have the money to buy a spot does not mean they're like, okay, we'll give it to you. We've had people before, because I used to work for a cable company in advertising, that wanted to run a smear campaign on his wife that he found out was cheating. And he wanted to pay to have a commercial ran, basically blasting her and a coworker for having an affair. So they do guidelines that are pretty strict, that kind of keep either controversial things or things that could be misleading on there. Even with political ads, it's pretty strict. So even on top of what you said, there's actually legitimate reasons why they didn't run that as well. I believe that.
We got to talk a little bit about House Plant in Chief even before we get to his town hall here, because he said some stupid stuff this week. including this. I've actually got two clips that we're going to go into just here. First, he's bringing up what they call an unfounded conspiracy theory that you probably should just leave in the dustbin and not talk about unless you want people to be suspicious, especially people like my friend Stephen Ignoramus, who live for conspiracy theories. But let's have a listen to this.
Not defunding the police.
And are there people who, in the Democratic Party, who want to defund the president?
Are there people in the Republican Party who think we're sucking the blood out of kids?
I'm not sure. Are there people in the Democratic Party who want to defund the president?
Yeah, I would probably have left that one alone if it was me in that situation.
I mean, of all the things, of all the analogies you can use, I mean, I'm not surprised that that's the one he picked. But of all the things you could use, and I didn't even hear, I mean, granted, I'm not big into following up on conspiracy theories and hearing all of it. It's usually, I always joke about the fact that it's already been a thing for a week or two before I finally hear about it, just because I'm so busy all the time. I don't get to spend as much time on social media as I'd like to kind of catch those. But yeah, that's definitely not one I would have shared. And ever since then, I keep meaning to Google where the heck that even, because I know where he said it was like QAnon that had made the rumor, but what it came from, I'm still meaning to Google it and be like, where did they even come up with this? What's the story?
Well, I can tell you don't say the title on YouTube because we will not have a YouTube stream anymore if you do that.
I will not.
They popped the generational gap for that. And that's a small show, too. There are like 4 people watching live. And they said the cheese pie fence store word. And 5 minutes later, they weren't on YouTube anymore.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, no.
They were on every other platform, but they were not on YouTube anymore. Plus, we also have the Yanny Laurel, the new Yanny Laurel that came out of Biden's mouth here. I have been searching since I got home from the bank today, high and low, to find the context for this. I can't find the context for this, but still, tell me what you hear when you hear him say this.
What must be what? What must be what? What must be what? What must be what? What must be what?
What are you thinking?
My something is white?
Is that what? I wish I could find context to see what question they asked him, but I know that the big one that keeps going with that is people think he's saying, my butt's been wiped.
I could hear that. Okay, I since you say that, I could hear that. But you know, it's one of those situations where people say things and then you almost don't know if you're really hearing it or not, or because of it. But I heard that going around now that you stated that, and that is, I'd like to hope not, but there's no telling with him. He says such kooky stuff.
All right, speaking of people who say kooky stuff, Maxine Waters got in the news this week. Rep. Maxine Waters calls for federal probe of LA County deputies' alleged executioners gang. Rep. Maxine Waters on Wednesday requested that the U.S. Department of Justice investigate allegations that a violent gang of deputies called the Executioners runs operations at Los Angeles County. I ask that the DOJ take 2 immediate actions: launch an independent investigation into the existence of executioners both at LASD Compton Station within the greater LASD community, and launch a pattern or practice investigation into LA Sheriff's Department for potential civil rights and constitutional violations, Waters wrote in a letter to the Attorney General Merrick Garland and Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark. Now, before I go into what I see off of this, what do you think of this situation?
So I will say that I think it's good that they're asking to have it looked into, right? Mm-hmm. Because it honestly wouldn't surprise me. I've been around a whole lot of, not just, men in general, no offense, but groups of people that whenever they spend that much time together every day, now it might not be to the extent that they think, but I mean, I worked with some people when I used to work in gaming, for example, and they jokingly called themselves a certain group and just for fun and stuff, because of the fact that they're around each other all day and it's their way to pass the time. So, I mean, there could be some truth to it, and if it's my only concern would be, okay, are they if they're called the executioners, are they inciting, are they looking for people that they can arrest for certain things? Like what are they doing that is negative, that is necessarily, requesting the fact that they're looked into? Are they just calling themselves a group and getting matching tattoos like people do? I mean, military gets matching tattoos, Marines get matching tattoos, police officers get matching tattoos. You have that, I've got your 6 tattoos. So those things on their own, I'm like, well, whatever. Groups of people get tattoos that are around each other all the time. That's not a big deal. But if they're doing something negative, then that's where I'm like, okay, we should probably look into it, because if it's nothing, you throw it out, and if it is something, then there you go.
Well, and I've always been bothered by this too, because I mean, they say all cops are bastards, but they love the cop that killed Ashley Babbitt. They think that she's the greatest American patriot, or he's the greatest American patriot in the world because he killed Ashley Babbitt. And I've heard some of them say that, and that scares the shit out of me. But I do have to wonder if we're getting to a point where they're trying to federalize the police and take it out of local hands. And when we start to see these investigations coming from the DOJ, that freaks the shit out of me. I'm not going to lie.
No, and I can definitely see that as well. Especially since we should be doing the opposite. Instead of federalizing the police, we need to be privatizing the police. But that's a whole separate talk for another day, right?
Yes. Yeah. I could make an across the board episode and have you on there, and we could talk about this for hours.
Oh,
because I'm on the opposite end of that only because, well, we're not going to get into it at this point. All right. From the Hill, Biden hits a new low in a Gallup poll. President Biden's approval rating has dropped to a new low of 50% in Gallup's opinion poll, according to the results published on Friday. Biden's approval rate dropped 6% from June in the new poll, which surveyed 1,007 adults between July 6th and July 21st. The lower rating comes amid new fears of inflation, a rising number of coronavirus cases, and a slowing vaccination rate. Broken down by a political party, only 12% of Republicans give the president a positive job approval rating, in comparison to 90% of Democrats and 48% of independents. The survey notes that his approval ratings among Democrats and independents are the lowest for those two groups to date, while the Republican rating was up a point.
Well, I will say that does not surprise me, especially the fact that, with the Democrats lowering, because we have another situation where he specifically had made promises to them that now that he's been in office, even though he hasn't even been in office very long, he's already gone against. He had this platform, for example, of, he did ride on the platform of defund the police. He did, with all of the issues going on with BLM and everything else. And then he turns around and gives, what was it, $300 and something million towards giving it to more police forces. I can't remember exactly the dollar amount, but everything that he has done has been very backwards to what he said he would do, or he has just not worked on anything towards it at all. So I'm not surprised, and I foresee it completely continuing to plummet to where I don't even know if he'll run for re-election in 4 years, if he's still around.
Well, I mean, he totally won the last election, honk honk. We have to say he's the most popular president in history on YouTube. Otherwise, they'll take us down. But usually, if we say the honk honk part of it, they look past it. More votes than even Barack Obama, honk honk. Last one that I have here, they've actually taken the video down, or they didn't take the video down, but the account owner that had the social media video locked his account down. I just figured out, but something that didn't surprise me happened over the weekend here, and it doesn't surprise me because I actually know the stretch of road that all this happened on because I used to work in that same general area. Wisconsin police hit back at social media video accusing officer of planting evidence. This is from Fox News. The police department in Wisconsin is hitting back against cell phone video taken during a traffic stop circulating on social media, arguing that body cam footage showing the incident from a different vantage point proves that an officer did not try to plant evidence in the backseat of a vehicle. The incident happened Wednesday at about 3:22 p.m. when officers from the Village of Caledonia Police Department conducted a traffic stop for vehicle traveling 63 and a 45. The driver was identified by her driver's license. The two rear passengers who were not wearing seatbelts were asked to identify themselves and later removed from the vehicle, the police said. The front passenger, who police say lawfully declined to identify himself, recorded a video on his cell phone that was later posted to social media with the caption, "Cop caught in 4K planting evidence." Did you see anything on this story?
I didn't. And when you were reading it back, did you say that the footage from the other side did confirm that they were planting or confirm that they did not plant it?
We watched the footage extensively this morning on Contemporary. We watched the actual toss from both the cell phone video and the body cam video several times, and I actually can't confirm whether or not he was planting evidence or whether or not what it was. From what it looked like they found an empty baggie with a corner torn off in the pocket of one of the people that they were detaining, which I think was an illegal detainment, but it's Caledonia. I'm not surprised. Mm-hmm. I'm not surprised by anything coming out of that police department. I'm going to be completely honest. And once again, used to live in the area. Know the police department very well. They found an empty baggie in the pocket, apparently, of one of the suspects that was taken out of the vehicle. And the officer that was questioning them handed it to the officer that was over by the car, and then he turned around and tossed it back in the backseat of the car. Apparently, according to all the testimony, it was empty when he tossed it in the backseat of the car, but really, honestly, you shouldn't just be tossing trash in a suspect's car anyway. Mm-hmm. And the village police did cite the officer on that as well.
Yeah, because at least they should have done, at least I'm not a police officer, but from what I have seen, they would have put it on top of the vehicle, marked it as evidence if they felt like there was something in it, and then taken it off. They shouldn't have put it back in the vehicle because that's just that would be, I would assume, against protocol. But I agree, it wouldn't matter anyways, because what would have been their reasoning for asking everybody to get out of the car?
Yeah, I mean, I've been pulled over in Village of Caledonia. I've never been pulled out of the car. In fact, I've been told numerous times to stay in the vehicle. I've been pulled over a lot.
When I've been pulled over by highway patrol for speeding, which I've only gotten like 3 speeding tickets in my life, so it has not happened very often. But one of the times when I got pulled over by highway patrol instead of like the city police, they did have me get out of the car, but it was to get inside of their vehicle, which I still to this day think is weird. But because of safety reasons, like as they're filling out the report and stuff on their laptop, they're not standing out by on the the side of the road with the chance of getting hit or something like that. But me as a female, and it was a male officer, I will say that did make me feel very uncomfortable doing that. But that's the only time I've ever been asked to get out of the vehicle ever.
Yeah. So, I mean, with that, and I mean, that stretch, like, they're not too far off I-94 from there. And from where I used to work, I mean, you saw it all the time in Racine County there. On the exit ramps for Highway K, Highway 20, Highway C, even up to 7 Mile Road. You just saw vehicles out there stopped, all the people out of the vehicle, and the police ripping apart back seats left and right. It happened all the time in that area, constantly.
And I have a big problem with that as well, because, obviously we're not getting into my platform, but criminal justice reform is my number one thing. And it's policing for profit versus policing for peacekeeping. I'm like, all these, it's like searching for criminals is not what you should be, like creating criminals, I should say, is not what you should be doing. When you're pulling somebody over for a traffic stop, even, you're not supposed to be seeking to find a criminal. If it happens to be a criminal through very obvious means, that's one thing. But trying to see if you can just find a bigger charge or find another reason, I mean, that's not the right way to do things. It's not.
Right.
And then you're doing yourself a disservice or anybody else if there was a bad person there because you just did it illegally, and now anything you find is thrown out anyways.
All right. Well, that's what I have for the lightning round here. We're going to get into some news here, but I promised questions between topics here, so we're actually going to look in and see what we've got going on here. I've got Highleaf in here with the Stucca half track. I don't know. Highleaf and Seawall love half tracks. I don't know why. It's an old, I think it's a German military vehicle, but they love them. Will Doherty is here with the laughing face. Milt Estevaz, that's a new name in here. Welcome on in. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us. Quest Fanning is over here. Highleaf says Trump could fill that place in 10 minutes or less. Yeah, we'll talk about the town hall in just a second. Let's see. I saw some questions in here. Yeah, we do have some questions in here for you. Highleaf asks, having a license for your CCW, good or bad?
Don't think it should be necessary. You should be able to carry regardless. Constitutional right. Constitutional carry, that's how we have it in Oklahoma.
Nice. Quest Fanning says, question, where does candidate Bruno fall in occupational licensure? Should they be streamlined, eliminated, recognize the license of someone coming from another state? Where is the situation in Oklahoma?
Ooh, I know that this is not a positive stance in my state, but I'm against them. You should not have to have a license to cut someone's hair, to braid hair, or to do different things like that. Should you have to have a license for if you're doing something like being a chiropractor or something like that? Absolutely. Practicing law. But when it comes to basic services and stuff like that, absolutely not. That's just another way that the government is just trying to nickel and dime people. And that's just a belief that I have.
Seawall's in here with his half track. It's Mod Seawall with a Banner Hammer 88. Just in case somebody wants to step out of line in the chat here. So welcome on in, everybody. Quest Fanning says when Columbus called the natives Indios, he was not at all likely mistaking those folks as being from India. Rather, he likely meant godless people. Nephilim says J. Edgar's dressed to the nines. What a pimp! Yeah, I decided to do a little bit dressier here, but also because I can't have the air on right now, and it's 95 degrees in Wisconsin, so this will hide it a little bit here as well. So that'll be nice. Let's see. At this point, a big part of the Biden agenda is applying California policies to give the state cover, as it'll be less clearly different in its failures. Seawall asks a question here. Do you support voting rights as a right or a privilege?
As a right.
Okay. Nephilim says they don't want us men to change genders to avoid conscription. Talking back on the draft thing.
Yep.
Let's see. Quest says my dad was drafted and went to Vietnam. He had distinct concerns about the equality of soldier his fellow draftees were.
Yep. For the same reason that I mentioned. I wouldn't want to be in there with somebody that didn't want to be there. If you don't want to be there, I don't want you there either.
We've got a quote from a movie that I've never seen in the chat here. Service guarantees citizenship from apparently Starship Troopers. Never seen it.
Never seen it either.
I've only seen like 8 movies in my life. That's a meme on this channel.
Oh, is it? I'm not that bad. I have seen lots of movies, but that's just not one of them.
Elaine is a movie aficionado, and I am not. So, yeah, and I've never seen The Princess Bride. And I get called on that all the time on this channel.
Oh, see, that's a classic. You've got to watch I almost feel like we need to set up a podcast that's not even a podcast, just to reserve like an hour and a half of your time just to make you watch it and then react to the movie as you go across it, because it's pretty great.
Well, we do actually, if you're in the Discord at all, or if you ever do Discord, we actually do have a movie night room in the Discord specifically for sharing movies with each other. So we have that option.
Send me the link. I am on Discord, and I love movies and recommendations and stuff, even though obviously I've only have a few months left of actually having enough time to occasionally sneak in a movie or a show, because come January through next November, I'm probably going to have no life and no sleep. But I am absolutely game for being added into that. Okay.
That'll actually get us using it again, because we've only ever watched The Roasted Dennis Leary and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World in that movie channel so far. Those are the only 2 that we've watched.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's keep going. Let's see. I thought I had another question here. Oh, Seawall says, here's the Lincoln Project. Starts the wood chipper.
That reminds me, I need to add a wood chipper shirt to my my merch site. I've had 2 people mention that, and then just hearing that again reminded me. So I'm going to add that to my sticky note.
Let's see. Nephilim says, I definitely won't suck the blood of kids, guys. Let's see. And you're wearing a shirt. We're all proud of you. They're proud of me. Let's see. What else do we have? Hiley says, my close group of friends called ourselves the Musket Boys.
Yeah, I had a group of friends that were in a car club that had a really horrible tattoo that I'm pretty sure they all wish they never got now that we're in our late 30s.
Nephilim Ninja of Nibiru says, if you don't make it necessary to license haircuts, people might cut their own hair. Gasp.
I've
actually done that before.
Doing that.
I've actually done that before.
I have not cut my own hair. For men, I think a lot of men have, especially the buzz cut thing. It's pretty easy to do. With myself, I've never been that courageous. There was a lot of viral videos going down of women doing like the COVID bangs where they do like the twisty and they cut. I thought about that just long enough to remember that I look horrible in bangs, and then I went along my way.
Well, because you can probably see I've got a little bit of the flowing locks going on here.
I do.
Growing for charity. But after I cut it, because I did this once when I was 22 as well. I grew it out at the same time there. When I first cut it, because I was uncomfortable having it really super short, I told her it still had to move when she was done with it, because otherwise I would think that I'd have no hair up there after having it down to the middle of my back for as long as I did.
Oh, wow.
And
bring it to donate, though. That's great.
Yeah. And probably about 4 months after she cut it, still had it able to move. It started getting in my eyes, and between work and school at the time, I'm like, dude, I can't deal with this. I can't go get a haircut right now. So I just took the scissors and there, it's out of my eyes.
Did you look like Friar Tuck from like Robin Hood with like the exact line?
No, because I just went over the front.
Oh.
Just to get it out of my eyes. I got one more question for you, and I don't know what Highleaf is trying to say here. But we're going to see if we can parse our way through this question. Kyle Rittenhouse, opinion on Jim. I don't know what you're asking, High Leaf.
How is he spelling Jim?
Jim, like the shortened version of James.
I don't even see that in here to try to look at it and pick it apart.
Yeah, I don't. Rephrase your question, High Leaf, and we'll catch this after we talk about the Olympics. So, yeah, let's get into that as long as we're here. Oh, it's him. It's not Jim. It's him. What's your opinion on Rittenhouse?
I don't have one because I don't know what you mean.
Yeah, it was the kid that defended himself in Kenosha.
Oh, I don't know if I think I vaguely saw something fly across social media on that, but I honestly, I didn't click and read the article. I will say that anytime anybody is defending themselves, I'm usually pretty supportive of that. So I would have to say without looking at it that I was probably in agreement.
And I know a lot more about the Rittenhouse situation than a lot of people because before I moved here to Redacted, I used to live in Kenosha, about a mile away from where all that happened.
Oh, wow.
Like where that altercation, I was about 2 miles away from where the Jacob Blake altercation happened. But
I remember what that is now. So that was whenever he was being chased, and then like the guy was trying to hit him with the skateboard, and then he shot back at them. That's okay because I knew the name sound familiar, and like for just a daggone second, I could not remember what that story was. I think it's sex. I mean, even though he was not being met with other firearms, I mean, he was.
And I was telling you,
if I had a big crowd of people chasing after me and somebody swinging a skateboard and stuff at me, I would have pulled my gun out too. I do carry. Now I would have maybe done like a warning shot first because most of those people, no offense, I'm generalizing, are kind of on the side where I guarantee you if they heard a gunshot, they would have started running and that probably would have done enough. But if I felt like I needed to shoot somebody to protect myself, I would have absolutely done it. Regardless if whether or not they had a physical gun or not, doesn't matter because, we've seen people, kick people to death. So I'm not going to take that chance myself. And I don't believe he would have either.
It's interesting because they're still marching the BLM flag up and down the street I used to live on. I went down there and visited.
Even right now? Like, I mean, I know
even now.
I assumed it would have kind of petered off by now.
No, it still hasn't, especially in that neighborhood. But yeah, if I hadn't moved in 2014, I'd have been able to hear and probably been involved in some of that stuff. Because I was right there.
Yeah, that's crazy. And yes, I know that warning shots are illegal, but I do err on the side of I try not to kill somebody if I don't feel like I have to. And I would like to think that many people would be happy with the fact that if I didn't have to kill someone and that did it, I mean, but there's a lot of things that are illegal that I don't necessarily agree with. So.
All right, let's talk about the Olympics, shall we? So starting off here, the Olympics started on Saturday. We saw, those of you who watched the Daily Ignoramus saw some very extensive clips of the opening ceremonies and everything that went with that, and some very bad dancing. The Olympics are taking place in full swing, except for no crowds. They're not having any crowds in whatsoever. So, and that was part of some of the things that came with the opening ceremony too. I mean, they're made for a screen at this point. They're not made to stand in front of stadiums full of people. They're not made to dance and sing and do all this in front of stadiums of people like they usually are. This year's ceremonies were entirely made to be put on the 16:9 screen. And you can see where some of this was set up. As of this point, we have seen some winners, some losers, some very good things coming off here. But one of the most interesting stories that floated around social media this weekend was on the first day, for the first time, and I think it was the entirety of Olympic history, the USA did not bring home any gold medals on the first day.
I did see that. It's kind of sad. So I'm a sports fan. I have a child actually that wants to be in the Olympics next time around. But I mean, we can't always win everything. We can't always be number one at everything.
What's the event?
Swimming. He's a competitive swimmer.
Oh,
His goal is to beat Michael Phelps as receiving the most gold medals. So we'll see. He's a very he has great goals. That's for sure.
that's lofty. It looks like, reading here from The Hill, Team USA athletes suffered multiple upset losses on the first official day of competition at the Tokyo Olympics on Saturday. The first time in decades the U.S. has walked away with no medals on day one of the Summer Games. A total of 11 gold medals were given out Saturday, and this is kind of where I get a little bit sad about this, because of the events. For events in archery, cycling, fencing, judo, air rifle, and pistol shooting, which, I mean, we're American, we should be natural at that, especially over the rest of the world, taekwondo, and weightlifting. However, U.S. athletes did not receive gold, silver, or bronze in any of the events on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I just said, we can't win everything. But I will say, I almost wonder a couple different things. One, if COVID the last year and a half, with gyms and different things being shut down here, if that might have played into any of it. I know that, you know, if you have money and you have the means to practice certain things like archery and stuff you can do from home, but there's certain things that you cannot necessarily practice from home. So I almost wonder if some of that might have played into it. Not to make excuses for us by any means. But, you know, you also run into situations too, where even with like, you know, shooting, for example, okay, yeah, there's a lot of countries that, yes, it's illegal, but they take their athletes that do those things competitively and they like drill them. I've seen lots of cool like documentaries and stuff like that over the years. So I think just because we're super pro to it doesn't mean we're going to automatically do well, even though I'd like for us to. So maybe we've gotten too cocky in certain areas, and so we haven't tried as hard. And so maybe now after this year, we'll have kind of like a fire going in our bellies to that we come back next time around and just kill it, especially since 2024 is in the United States, right? It's in LA.
I think I have not been paying attention to the Olympics for a very long time. I think the last time I paid close attention to the Olympics was when we did a thematic week in grade school about the Olympics. I think that's the last time I've actually paid attention to the Olympics. Spoiler alert, we actually got participation trophies in that too. Surprise, surprise. But Highleaf actually brings a good story in here that I also wanted to talk about with this before we get into some of the other stuff with this. ESPN writer troubled... No, that's not that one. That's not the one. I want this one. There it is. I had the wrong Fox News article. Costa Rican gymnast Olympic routine includes support for BLM. Because he says they were trying to focus on wokeism. And, I mean, they were told specifically that they weren't supposed to do any political messaging of this. But I don't think that that's going to stop any of them at this point. I think that is ingrained enough in the society that they're going to start doing it here. Mm-hmm. And even the one that I tried to read first here, ESPN writer, troubled by American flag at Olympics. I keep thinking back on the Capitol riots. So... I mean, there is an injection of some sort of, you know, shame at the country at this point that I think is coming over to people who are supposed to be representing our country on the world stage. But, well, what's your take on the idea of representing your country on the national stage? I'm curious to that.
So first of all, I am, and, you know, maybe it is because I'm a military brat, I am extremely patriotic. And it's cheesy, but I literally tear up every single time I hear the national anthem, ever. That's just the way I am. So even though it emotionally upsets me when I feel like our country is being disrespected, especially in a case where you're in the Olympics, right? And this is supposed to be like the single most honorable thing that anybody gets to do for their country, is to go and represent their country in, you know, the worldwide, you know, Olympic Games. So it's like, that should be the one time that you put the politics out of things and just be there to be a representation of your country and be, you know, patriotic and supportive and proud. Because it's like, if you are so not proud of your country that you want to bring politics into it, then why are you even in the Olympics? Why are you even there representing your country? You shouldn't be there. And that's just the way that I feel. Now, I believe in free speech. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But when you're in a situation where your whole purpose is to represent your country that you're supposed to love in these Olympic Games, then you shouldn't be there. I'm sorry. You shouldn't. You should, basically say, I'm the best at this, I'm the best at that, but my way of protesting is to not represent my country. That would have been a better route to do it, not to go and disrespect your country in a worldwide stage.
Yeah, and I mean, some of these other countries, like even the Chinese, where, I mean, there's some human rights abuses going on over there. They're still standing up there, waving that great big red flag, saying, "Hail China, we love China." Mm-hmm. Also because they're afraid of the repercussions when they get home. And I do like the fact that, for as much as I disagree with the American athletes doing this, I do like the fact that they can come home and say, okay, well, I'm going to get on with my life now. Not, okay, am I going to the gulag? Are my friends and family ever going to see me again?
Mm-hmm. That is true as well.
Because there are countries out there that are participating in these year's games that would happen to the people if they tried to pull some stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely. We all know that to be true. And it's sad. Like, it really is. It just breaks my heart to kind of see that in really in any sport, but especially in the Olympics. And I almost wish that we had more stern rules that's like, if you do something like that where you're supposed to be representing our country, I mean, just think of it as a business, you know what I mean? Like if you have certain standards for your employees, like then nowadays you have social media agreements, different things you're allowed to say and not say because you're a representation of your company. It's the same thing when you're a representation from a sporting, now do you have the right to say, well, I want to say what I want, so I guess I'm not going to do this? Absolutely. But that's where we kind of got to put it back on, the different organizations and stuff like that to write those into rules because, it cannot be done governmentally because obviously it's not up to the government. It needs to be up to those different sports organizations to put that in there. Mm-hmm. And then you have the right to not do it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I like you said, because you still say you tear up at these patriotic things up here. I remember, and this was the thing that blew me away when I started seeing the kneeling protests and everything, because I remember, I bleed green and gold. I am a Packer fan for life, even though I haven't really been watching football because of the woke shit. Mm-hmm. I remember, 19, 20, 22 years old, watching the opening of the Patriots or the Packers or whichever team, because I lived in Boston for 2 years. Mm-hmm. Whichever the team the home was, and they play the national anthem, and you see these guys, when we were younger, they weren't kneeling, they were standing up there, their helmets off, they're sitting here holding their chest piece, and you could see the emotion in their eyes while they're doing this. Mm-hmm. How did we get from there to here?
Media primarily, and people feel like they have to pick a side. And they feel like they have, by not doing a certain thing, then they're not supporting a certain side. And it's just, it's really unfortunate. Mm-hmm. But I agree with you because like one of my favorite things, a lot of my kids play sports. And so I get to see multiple times a week sometimes with different games and swim meets and tournaments and stuff. I've never seen a situation where someone's kneeled in person. We're all pretty patriotic here for the most part, and I don't think it would detract from my experience seeing that because I don't pay attention to it. I'm looking at the flag, but I'm almost wondering if we stopped putting any attention on it and stopped publicizing that it's done, if it would just stop because it's all about getting attention, right? So if we don't give attention, there's no reason for them to do it, and then it just kind of goes away.
I want to talk about the beds for a second because this was bizarre, the fact that this even went around. So this year's Olympics featured beds that were made out of recycled cardboard, both because it was easy to get the materials, but also because they could break these back down relatively quickly and recycle them back into other things. Mm-hmm. And because of, and I don't know where you stand on Corona, well, I said it there, but I try not to say the C words on this show because they get you deranked on YouTube. Mm-hmm. So I'll say the comic coup for the pinko pox. Is that acceptable?
Got it.
Okay. So, I mean, they saw these beds as a way to keep the athletes from doing it with each other because they didn't want to have the rampant spread of the pinko pox throughout all this here because they were informed wildly that these beds would break apart as soon as anybody tried to put more than one person on them, which, as we mentioned on the morning show, if you think the only place you can do it is a bed,
You must have a very vanilla life.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Regardless, there was a video, and I wasn't able to bring it back up because I didn't have the tweet for it again because it got deleted. But one of the Olympic gymnasts from Ireland was jumping up and down on this bed over and over again. So I mean, it was actually a recycling thing. It had nothing to do with trying to keep people from doing what people do when they're jacked up on hormones and endorphins and everything else.
Yeah. And you know what? I think it's awesome that they're doing that, because I don't know if you've ever watched any of the videos or different things about like after the Olympics leave. And you have situations, especially in like smaller countries, where they buy all these things, they get all this stuff, and then, you know, obviously everybody leaves, and then there's just trash and like all these things that they, you know, didn't need that now are just like in piles to like go to dumps and stuff like that. It's usually like a pretty big concern following Olympics when they're in countries that are not as set up.
In today's episode.
So I actually think it's really cool that they did that. You know, I don't like to consider myself like a hippie by any means, but I think it's really cool that they were using, you know, recyclable products and stuff like that. That's really cool. But it also doesn't surprise me that they were, even if they planted the rumor, like, oh, just so you know, we did this just to kind of, because you know how it is. The Olympics are known to be kind of an orgy fest. To try to keep.
They're Greek. What do you expect?
It doesn't surprise me, but I mean, to be honest, it sounds like something that like my parents or something would have said back in the day. It's like, don't you guys try anything in here because we have it set up this way. You know, but like I said, it's cool that they were doing that for environmental purposes. I like it. I can support that. I hope we do that whenever it comes to LA, that we try to do as much renewable and recyclable as possible.
By the way, that is in 2028. Paris is 2024. We got corrected in the chat.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I knew it was really, really soon.
And I also have to correct myself because I do have the video. I found it while you were talking. So let's watch the bed demonstration here.
In today's episode of Fake News at the Olympic Games, the beds are meant to be anti-sex. They're made out of cardboard, yes, but apparently they're meant to break at any sudden movements. It's fake news. In today's episode.
The accent did it for me. That's what did it for me more than anything else.
I love it.
I got a little bit of funny news that goes with this, and then something that we actually do need to talk a bit. This one goes along with the Paralympics, but let's talk about the funny one here first. Black Bear interrupts the Tokyo Olympics. This came towards the end of last week, so this is before the official start of this. Black Bear ventured onto Fukushima softball arena as the Tokyo Games began on Wednesday, getting onto the field just hours before the match between Japan and Australia. The black bear, a species common to Japan, was spotted twice this week at Azuma Sports Park and is reportedly still on the loose at Fukushima officials search for it. The entire security for the event of that night reportedly has been designated to search for the bear.
Just leave the bear alone. He's fine. He's looking for food. He's just looking to be fed. Plus, if they're like, you know, using noise and stuff like that, it probably won't come back around. But that's funny. It's kind of cute.
I like that.
Did you see the article that came out? There was I think it was in Alaska. Some gentleman was hiking and had been attacked by a bear like numerous times over the course of a week until he was finally found and rescued.
Mm-hmm.
Hear about
that?
No,
I haven't seen that. No.
So that's the negative side of bears. So I can see how they were probably pretty cautious to try to catch it. But I mean, you know, in those situations, you just have a couple guys with some, you know, whatchamacallit, the guns that shoot the like, oh my gosh, the things that make them go to sleep.
Tranquilizer.
There we go, tranquilizer. Thank you. You know, just have some tranquilizer guns around and just keep an eye. You don't need to go chasing the bear down.
There's a bear that apparently lives at my dad's place. Nobody's ever seen the bear.
Like on like does he have acreage or something and it like hangs
30 acres.
Does he have
30 acres in northern Wisconsin. What's up?
Does he have game cameras up so he can try to see?
Not that I know of, and like I say, nobody's ever actually seen the bear, but they found its crap.
Oh, well, that's enough. Yeah, scat is all it takes, right?
Yeah. And a little bit of downside news from this here, because some of this actually happens here. Reading from NPR, which I'm not going to do my NPR voice for this one because we only do that in the morning show.
I'm disappointed.
Deaf-blind athlete quits Team USA after she's told she can't bring a care assistant. So this is following the story of Becca Myers, a swimmer seen as a favorite to bring gold home from Tokyo, has canceled plans to compete in the Paralympics after being told she can't bring a personal care assistant to Japan. Myers is deaf and blind, U.S. Olympic Paralympic Committee officials say they don't have a space for her to bring an aide because of coronavirus restrictions on athletic delegations.
Yeah,
that's what I have to say to that.
No, 2 big thumbs down on that. See, there were so many people that dropped the ball on this. Number one, during registration, whoever was responsible for that, whether it's her coach, whether it's the association, the U.S. Olympics that gives all that information for the Paralympics, should have made sure that anybody that needs accommodations like that, I mean, it's the Paralympics, so of course there's going to be some people that need accommodations, should have been met. Secondly, when it comes to not having space because of delegations, I'm sorry, but if there was not supposed to be any spectators and Mrs. Biden was able to make it and they had room for her, then they could have absolutely made room for her to have had her mom there to help her, get to where she needed to be and everything like that. Like that was just, especially being a mom of a swimmer myself, like that's really, really sad. They could have made it work. And then it's really unfortunate that happened. And I feel for her.
And especially for that situation. Now, I can understand where, like, some of the Paralympians who are missing a limb or something can, they've adapted to get around. Even, like, I follow Deaf Libertarian on Twitter. And, she's made it very, very pointed, the fact that she can live a normal life without her hearing. My older sister is legally blind, like, almost completely blind, can live a normal life like that. Mm-hmm. But to have the combination of the two, you're going to need some help. I'm sorry.
Yeah, especially if you're in an unfamiliar area. So, for example, if you are doing it at her pool that she practices at all the time and she knows where everything is and where everything's located, you have a little bit better of a situation where you could get by with that. Because you even have the situation where even if they have people there to like assist, how many of them might have language barriers? They have to assist with so many different areas. They're trying to keep the amount of, people who are even working down lower because of COVID, and they were being so concerned with everything. And so I just, it really was sad and upsetting.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the F on that. Let's grab another topic here quick before we hit some live chat. Because I want to get through some more of this. What else we have on the stack for the day?
I'm running out of time myself. So I had an hour marked for this. So.
Oh, who dropped the ball on that? I wonder. Because I told Will this was a 2-hour show.
Will, you're fired. I'm just kidding.
All right. Then let me juggle a couple things here then. All right. We're going to hold off in the town hall to see what we... What's that?
I said, but no pressure.
All right. I want to talk about this Whitmer thing. I definitely want to get through that today. Mm-hmm. Because that was a big one. And I mean, there's not a lot of information to it because, it's towards the end of it. But given the position that you're coming in, I think this is going to be one that you're definitely going to be talking about coming off with this. So let's talk about this. So reading from Fox 2 out of Detroit, FBI agent who testified about Whitmer kidnapping plot faces assault charges. That's not where I want to go with this. I want to go with this one here. Men accused of Whitmer kidnapping plot say FBI set them up. This one comes out of the Hill. The men who are accused of attempting to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer are saying the FBI set them up according to court filings and dozens of interviews. There were at least 12 FBI informants involved in the investigation into the group for months while they were allegedly plotting to kidnap the governor. The FBI's involvement was much bigger than previously known, as the agency was involved when the plot began and had informants allegedly encouraging the group to further its plans, BuzzFeed News reported. Now, I've not seen confirmation for this, and as soon as I read this article on Contemporary, I asked, how many people were in this group? Somebody told me 17 people were in this group.
Wow.
If 12 of them are FBI agents, this seems to be a problem.
Seems to be a setup.
I have no confirmation that it was only 17.
Oh my gosh. I mean, obviously accusations are accusations, but again, I always go back around to, and maybe I give people too much credit, that when you make accusations that somebody is setting you up that is in the government, then you probably have some pretty good proof, or it's got to be pretty accurate. I mean, otherwise they would just, blame it on some other guy or say, oh, it wasn't my idea, it was his idea, or, whatever. But I mean, our government is scary, guys. There's a reason why, people, with Epstein and everything about, people getting suicided and everything else and all the other conspiracies that, there's what is it, the meme that's going around right now that says, what's the difference between reality and a conspiracy theory? And it's about 12 months or something like that. It's so now I'm at this point now where I'm like, I almost will believe anything. I'm like, let me dig into it myself. But I wouldn't be surprised. I would, again, like to hope not, but we all unfortunately know that really anything's possible nowadays. And there's literally documentaries, that have come out in the last year that, support the fact that the federal government has been involved and framed people for various reasons and stuff like that. So, I mean, gosh, I'd hope not, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
And I mean, that's a lot of what we see coming back out of this too. It's, this really throws into question for me the Capitol Selfie Fest and everything that happened there. Like, is this really something where the FBI set this up?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're seeing it from this. I'm sure that this was, especially if it was only 17 people in the group and 12 of them are FBI agents. It was 5 people in their basements in chat rooms saying, I'm so sick of that bitch Gretchen Whitmer. What are we going to do about this? Oh, hey, fellow internet extremists, would you like to go plot a kidnapping and assassination attempt? Just say yes on the dotted line. And they're out here training for this then, too.
Gosh, it's crazy. But you know what? With the January 6th thing, too, I'm like, realistically, they knew that it was coming. It's been talking about for weeks, and you just let people just kind of walk right in. I mean, there's a lot of things that have happened recently where I definitely see that a setup was there.
I told the people that watched my morning show especially, but we did the Red and Ed show audience too, I told them not to go.
Mm-hmm.
I credit Stephen Ignoramus for going and hanging out and doing what he did there, in spite of the fact that Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube all took his videos back down after all this, but the fact that he went there, a cell phone in each hand, streaming the entire day in the midst of all that, I give him a lot of credit for that, but I told a lot of people, don't go. This is a fucking trap. This is a setup.
Yep. I mean, I wouldn't have, even if I was able to have had the time or the means to, fly there for that reason, I wouldn't have done it for that very reason. I mean, that's just asking for, nothing good could come of that.
I thought there was going to be a lot more shooting coming back out of the government at this point, but even still,
what I honestly thought was going to happen, what should have happened is obviously it was being talked about. Everybody knew it was going to happen. I felt like there was going to be like a National Guard presence, added security. People would show up, basically protest outside because they can't get in, and then that's it. Like, I definitely did not think that they were basically just going to be like, here you go, just walk in, which is basically kind of what happened.
All right. Well, and, that's, like you say, there's too much government. That's the biggest part of this here. And they are looking for ways to entrap people. Like you had said with the traffic stop, too, when we talked about that on the lightning round, where they're coming in and they're pulling people out of the vehicle for speeding and not wearing a seatbelt. And now, oh, hey, I happen to find this baggie on you. Oh, let's just toss that back in the car. They're always looking for something else to grab you on.
Mm. Yeah. No, that's not good.
All right. You want to try and grab one more off of this? I'll give you dealer's choice, too, then, if you can.
Sure. Let's do it.
All right. So do you want to do Texas Democrats, breakthrough cases, or 1-6 commission?
course, I want to talk about the Texas Democrats.
All right, let's talk a little bit about this. And I'm actually the most eager to do this one because this would be an issue that you would actually face as a governor, and that's the reason this didn't land on the lightning round. So to catch everybody back up on review for this, these past couple weeks, the Democrats in Texas for the state legislature, in order to protest and prevent the vote on voting reform, packed up, got on a charter bus, and then got onto a private plane and flew to Washington, D.C., where they have been hanging out and intend to hang out until the first month of August when the special session expires. Numerous antics have shown up. This is costing, apparently, the people of Texas millions of dollars to have them do this, by the way, which I'm not sure. I haven't been able to corroborate those numbers and see where they're going for this, but this is causing the taxpayers a bunch of money to do this. And we have no quorum. A lot of people are calling for the legislators to be arrested. And the first thing I got to ask you is what's your take on this whole thing?
So, okay, there's two kind of things that are to address here. There may be three, and I'm just not counting them right starting off. So the first thing is, I think it's hilarious that we have the Democrats fleeing to Washington. None of them are wearing masks when they are the ones that are so adamant about wearing masks. And I know that their argument was, oh, well, we work together all the time. We've all been vaccinated, yada, yada. But most of the messaging that's coming from them is, it doesn't matter if you've been vaccinated. If you're in places where you don't know if other people have been vaccinated, you need to wear a mask because you can still spread it to them. And it's all about protecting other people. So what about all the staff on the airplane, right? What about, all of these situations? And then they get there and then they spread COVID to everybody, right? So part of me is thinks that's kind of hilarious, right? And I am a huge believer in karma. And I felt like this was the best version of karma lately than I have seen. Just to throw that out there. And then there's the whole ramifications of what they did, which was absolutely not okay. And so the problem is for me, running for an office is, okay, is there law written that protects something like this from happening? If there isn't, now there needs to be. When we talk about minimal government and stuff like that, we do need to have laws though that keep our elected officials in accountability, because they were basically hindering things by them running off, which, like you said, cost the taxpayers tons of money, right? And so, if there was already a law in place that specifically kept them from being able to do that, absolutely they should be thrown in jail. They're not above the law just because they are elected officials. If there was a law written to protect something like that from happening in their state, then they absolutely should be arrested for it.
Well, and I mean, because the news immediately dropped this off as soon as everybody came back. But this is actually not a new thing for me living in Wisconsin. Do you remember the Act 10? Do you remember the Act 10 riots back in 2011 when Scott Walker passed Act 10?
No, I don't. Not offhand. So
this Act 10 was a union rights bill. It was for public sector unions, but all the private sector unions got in on it too because, that's what they did. It was a very mild reform to public sector unions. They were supposed to contribute 1% to their retirement, and they lost the ability to collectively bargain because, once, if you're a police officer, a teacher or something, once you go on strike, that does put a lot of things back into chaos. Plus, you are striking against the taxpayers at that point. That's an entire Republican talking point. That could be another full 2-hour show by itself, in and of itself. But there were protests of the bill when it came out and when it passed. There were millions of dollars of damage done to the Wisconsin state capitol. And now this is different from Texas law, because Texas law requires, 2/3 of the House to be in place in order to have quorum.
Yes.
In order to have quorum in Wisconsin, there has to be at least one member of the opposite party present. So they all went to the west suburbs. They all went to Chicago.
Yeah, see, I think it's funny, obviously, but from an actual judicial standpoint, gosh, this is such a waste of money. And as taxpayers, I'd be pissed off. You know what I mean? Like, I would be completely pissed off, even if
I have taken devil's advocate position on that, actually, on what you just said there. As a taxpayer, you'd be pissed off. Honestly, especially if they're coming from Democrat districts, I would almost say that their taxpayers are proud of this because they want this bill stopped at whatever cost necessary. And, well, that's pretty much what these guys did.
Yeah, but there's a right way and a wrong way to do things, right?
Yeah, I do agree with that, but that's the devil's advocate position I found for that. The way you can come back and say, okay, well, they maybe are doing what the taxpayers want. Maybe. I don't know.
I guess it depends on if you're in a red state or a blue state, right?
Yeah. Well, I know they've been outraged because they've met with Kamala at this point. They've met with several of the House Democrats. That's their big goal for this, is to try to get the House and Senate to come together and pass the For the People Act. But they feel like they're entitled to an audience with the president himself, too, and he won't give it to them.
I mean, I wouldn't either. I mean, he wouldn't even, like, go to in-person debates or anything like that. There's a reason there's the whole Weekend at Bernie's thing going on, right? Just trying to keep him. He can't even do a town house without making himself look like an idiot multiple times. So if I was his advisor, I would advise him not to go either.
Plus, there's the fact that he's 80 years old and 6 of 14 had breakthrough COVID cases.
Well, I mean, that's fair too.
So, what is now obviously be working with a different constitution than Texas is, but if this happens in Oklahoma, what's your solution to this? I got to ask that question.
Well, I would say that I would have to look into how we specifically have rules set up for in those kinds of situations, if we have anything or not. I will tell you that there has been a whole lot of chatter since the whole Texas thing happened, that it would not surprise me if we are literally working on a bill right now to protect ourselves. But I will tell you what, that I can say that if I was elected, that is probably one of the first few things that I would do, is to make sure that we have something in place, even though we haven't had anything like that happen.
Right.
That we would make sure that there is something in place that's like, if you're not going to be here when you're supposed to be here, and have something like that happen, then it basically says that you are abandoning your seat, and then I guess we just need to elect somebody else to take your place.
All right. Well, as a truncated show, because we're figuring this out at the same time, that's what I have for you right now, except for I do have one little bit of surprise stupidity that I wanted to throw on here before the end of the show. So let me go get that pulled up for you. It is right here. And speaking of COVID, this actually fits in and dovetails perfectly with this. So this is from out of the country. We're going to read from ABC 7 here. COVID positive man disguises as wife on Indonesian flight. This comes from the AP. An Indonesian man with coronavirus has boarded a domestic flight disguised as his wife. Wearing a niqab, covering his face, and carrying fake IDs and a negative PCR test result. But the cover did not last long. Police say a flight attendant aboard a CityLink plane traveling from Jakarta to Ternate in North Maluku province on Sunday noted the man changed the clothes in the laboratory. He bought the plane ticket in his wife's name. He brought the identity card, the PCR test result, and the vaccination card with his wife's name on it. All documentation under his wife's name, Ternate Police Chief Aditya Laksimada said after arresting the man upon landing, he was only identified by his initials. Somewhere, somebody had that thought go through his head and said, that's going to work.
It almost did. I bet if he wouldn't have changed in the bathroom, if he would have just stayed changed, wife said, I can't believe that. Again, very funny, but that's very selfish also. Like, that drives me, that's basically on the same level. And this is not to, like, one of my biggest pet peeves are people who send their children to school sick, like with strep throat and stuff like that. And they're like, I got to work, so you're going to have to go to school anyways. And then gets, like, the entire class sick with strep throat or pink eye or whatever it is, because it's super selfish. That's definitely on the super selfish level. Like, I'm surely whatever you had to do was not that important that you had to go infected with COVID into an airplane, especially considering you can do pretty much anything with Zoom right now. Like, if it's a big meeting or whatever, like, just do Zoom.
I've never set foot in Oklahoma, and here I'm talking with a gubernatorial candidate, thanks to the miracle of Zoom.
Oh, yay for technology, right?
Yeah. So I say that. I said, you know what? This is going to be a fun one to throw at the end of the show with, and it was.
I give an A for creativity, but definitely should not have been done.
All right, we got to head out of here. So let's throw some music up and let's go. All right, so I want to take some time to thank you for coming by and hanging out with us, throwing a little bit of news back and forth with us, and getting to see how somebody would actually react in some of the actual real world ideas of what this is. This was a good, productive discussion, and I hope we can do this again sometime closer to campaign time as well. Just sit down and talk about what's actually going on in the world and what the platform says about what's actually going on in the world at the time. I'll talk to Will about that. Yeah, and I'll let him know it's 2 hours.
Yes, and I will make sure to, if he doesn't put it on for 2 hours, I will move it to 2 hours to make sure that the time is protected.
And hopefully there'll be 3 people on the screen at that time too. So we'll get Elaine in here too.
I'd love to have Elaine on. Absolutely.
All right, we got to head out of here though. So thank you guys, everybody who chatted in the live chat here. Remember, you guys can come back and finish the conversation with us over on my Twitter, that is at EdsBlog Twitter, with a 1 in place of the I. My guest co-host today, at Natalie Bruno. Go and check her out over there. It sounds like she's going to be in the Discord if you want to finish the conversation with her as well. I'll get that link over there for her as well, so you can come back and ask questions, because, I mean, if she's there, she'll come back and answer some questions too. So definitely use that resource if it's available to you guys, and we'll see what the platforms are. This was really good. I will be back here tomorrow morning for more contemporary, so come back and hang out with me. That is bright and early, 7 o'clock every weekday morning, so come back. If anybody wants to come and find you and in any upcoming events, what do they have for you?
Yeah, so I put everything on my website, which is electnataliebruno.com. It has events, it has previous interviews, so this one will be on there as well. It has my issues page is down for probably 1 or 2 more days as I've been adding more things to it. But you can also read it about me. I have some pretty fun merchandise on there. So, and all my other social media handles are on there as well. So, electnataliebruno.com, and donations, because obviously running a campaign is not cheap. So, I would appreciate any and all donations.
Yeah, and with that, we're going to head on out of here. So, as I always say at the end of the show, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Natalie, lead them out with some last words.
Have a good one. Thanks for having me on. I don't have any other words than that except for visit my website.
Take care.